Hi, I'm Catherine Story. Welcome to my channel, House of Story. I'm here in Miami, and last night I met with fellow artist and amazing photographer, among other things, Karen Bystedt. Karen and I were introduced through a mutual friend, Steve, in LA. She was relocating to Miami, and we've connected and hung out and had fun, but I didn't know her whole story. I knew she had photographed Andy Warhol, but I didn't know how it came about. You're going to be surprised. I need a part 2 of this for sure. So I'm here with my friend Karen, and we're in Miami in her apartment. And I met her briefly in LA, and we've become friends here in Miami, which has been really wonderful to meet a fellow artist.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just a pleasure. We get to talk about our challenges and our accomplishments.
And also just both being here new in Miami. But what I really want to know about more than anything is, your journey. It sounds like there's so much, and we're just going to touch on a few things. We probably need a part 2 of this interview. But mostly, of course, everybody's intrigued with how you were able to connect with the world that you connected with in New York. So tell me where were you? What were you doing? What year was it?
It was in the 80s, just before Andy died. He died in 1988.
So Andy Warhol, she's talking about.
Andy Warhol, yeah. So I was a student at NYU Film School, and I thought I wanted to be a filmmaker. But then I had a boyfriend who took me to Paris, and he loved fashion, and he wanted me to take pictures of him. And I kind of fell in love with photography, specifically fashion photography. And I was also living in New York. My background, I was a world baby. I had traveled all over the world because my mother dragged us everywhere, but I was very cultured. I'd gone to museums. I'd gone to camp in Switzerland. I'd just experienced so much. Money, no money, many schools. And so I was a very sophisticated young adult at the age of 18. I graduated from high school when I was 16. So I went to Europe for a year and a half and then ended up going to NYU Film School. Once I fell in love with photography, I decided to get an internship at a big fashion photographer studio.
Really?
And
in New York?
In New York, yes, Marco Glaviano. And he was shooting for Harper's Bazaar, and he was also doing catalog work. And so models at the time, all the models who had covers were coming through his studio. And so I got to meet everyone. And I'm just, more than anything, I'm a conceptual artist, and I have visions of what trends. And I thought, oh my God, I should do a project about male models because there are all these super female models. At that time, all the covers were these supermodels. And now it's celebrities and singers and actors and actresses. But then it was the model. And I thought, well, the guys are starting to rise, and why don't I do a project about them?
That's amazing.
So I started to enroll these top guys, Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren, all these guys to shoot with me. And some of them I met at Marco's studio, and then others I just ventured to the biggest the modeling agency. And I was young and cute, and I was driven.
Yeah. So what, you capture them and say, like, I want to take your picture? Or
at the studio, exactly. I'm doing this project on male models, and I'd love to interview you and photograph.
Was Marcus one of them? Marcus, the one that was with Versace? Marcus Weinberg.
Scheikerberg.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Oh, well, sorry. Oops.
Yeah, I didn't photograph now. But I did photograph Andy Warhol. I did photograph that first.
So so you were interested in photography. You were connected with all the major modeling agencies, working with a photographer. And then how did the Warhol thing come about?
Well, so I was going out to clubs like area, which was like Eric Good owned it, and I was going to clubs like Nell's and, just hobnobbing with a lot of amazing people like Dolph Lundgren and Grace Jones, Sade and Madonna. I was like in the in crowd.
Right.
So I would always see Andy out. Andy was out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He owned Interview magazine at the time, and I'd see him everywhere, but I didn't really know him. And then one day I was perusing through GQ, which is what I did to look for models, and I saw this ad with Andy Warhol, and he was modeling in a Barney's ad, and I was like, oh my God, Andy is a model. I have to get him.
Right.
And I just got it in my head, like, I need Andy for my book.
Wow.
And so I knew at the time, his thing was Interview magazine, and that was the last factory in Union Square.
Mm-hmm.
I knew exactly where he was, and I called, and he answered the phone.
Oh, wow.
So I, which I didn't expect.
Yeah.
But someone's writing a screenplay about my life during that period, and I've gone back and talked to some people who knew me, including a couple of the models, and they said they were amazed at how driven and how organized I was for someone being so young.
Mm-hmm.
And I just knew what I wanted, and I wanted to get this book, this whole project going. So when I called Warhol, Andy, and I said, Mr. Warhol, this is Karen Bystedt, or Karen Hardy, that's my maiden name. I am working on this project on male models, and I would love to photograph you as a model. And he just said, really? Well, who else do you have? So it turns out that he was really into modeling, and then he knew the guys that I had already
Oh, wow.
enrolled and who had already shot, basically.
Right.
And when he found out the list of who I had, he agreed to do it.
Wow.
2 weeks later, I didn't waste any time. I went in with an assistant. I rented a Hasselblad because it was Warhol, and I wanted to honor the fact that he was a big artist, even though I was going to photograph him as a model.
Right.
And I went into Interview magazine at Union Square, and he was waiting for me in the conference room. And he had styled himself in this beautiful tweed suit, red suit, and he was wearing this very unique, neat wig. And so I did that shoot.
So how was he? Was he like how we see him portrayed, which is very like one word answers and more a little aloof?
He was like that. Because I also interviewed him. So I didn't just photograph everyone. I interviewed them. So I also interviewed Andy.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in the room with him, when I wasn't focused on the angles and trying to make him look good, because my thing is always seeing the beauty in people. And what I did manage to do, even though on some of the photographs, he's very kind of like this, but I did manage to get some eye contact out of him. And that's why with Shepard Fairey, who I recently collaborated with, he told me that what got him about my photograph were the eyes. How great the eyes look. So that particular shot that I chose was a bit softer, and Andy was actually communicating. But I think he was very excited about modeling, and so that's why he agreed to shoot with me. But I just to answer your question, I remember thinking, what is he talking about? And then when I listened back to the tape, I was like, oh my God, everything he said is brilliant. It was like that. It was just his delivery.
Really? Wow.
And he was kind of sarcastic, Like I said to him, what is your favorite hobby? And he said, everything I do is a hobby. And who is your, what's your favorite movie? Coming events. So at the time you're thinking, well, why isn't he telling me a specific movie?
Right.
But the coming events is a brilliant answer.
Yeah. Right.
He is my muse and I'm his muse.
So then did you go on to publish the book that you were...
I did.
Of male models. And what's that book called?
It's called Not Just Another Pretty Face.
I love
America's Top Male Model.
I love that.
America's Sexiest Top Man, and Andy Warhol's in there.
So did he respond to it, or did he?
Yes, he came to the party.
He did. Oh, how nice.
Yes, but what's interesting is that I've now talked to one of the models, and Good Morning America featured the book, and they didn't invite Andy at the time.
Oh,
Isn't that weird? They invited the model.
Oh, so
Yeah, it is. Well, I think that is interesting. But he did. He came to the party, and Calvin Klein wrote me congratulations.
Oh, that's amazing. So now let's talk about and I'm just learning this. Why were they lost? What's the lost Warhols? Is because why?
It's because I literally lost the negative.
How?
I was young, a bit careless. I moved a lot. After doing that book on models, I went in to photograph actors before they were famous, like Brad Pitt.
I saw the pictures are amazing of this book that she, everybody you can think of in Hollywood as a young actor, she photographed. Johnny Depp, Brad Pitt,
Senator Boy,
on and on.
Right.
And that's another book, right?
Yes, so I published that book. It was called, I did The New Breed, and then I did Before They Were Famous.
Before They Were Famous.
Yeah.
So you didn't realize at that time how big Warhol...
No, I did, but I think I got lost in that time because he was so accessible and he was always out. And, he really... I think Warhol has gone through different phases in his career, both during his lifetime and after his death. And he's now one of the biggest artists in the world. I mean, one of his pieces, one of the Marilyns went for $200 million recently.
Yeah, amazing.
But at the time, a lot of people were putting him down because he was out a lot, and they said he was very social, and he was also about volume versus so he made money, and he he had this amazing group of business people around him, like Fred Hughes and everyone that worked at Interview magazine. It's really, I will say something about me. I'm always out of the box, and the way I connect to people is not through normal channels.
Right.
So the way I got Andy and the way I got Robert Downey and even Brad, I mean, I just somehow come up with this idea and I go for it and I connect. So it's just not the norm.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that at the time, Andy was a big deal, and I had gone to museums as a child. I knew that he had done the Brillo and the Campbell soup. So I grew up knowing that he was a huge artist. But by the time I was in New York with him, he was kind of considered an artist socialite.
Yeah. So because he would go to all of it. Wasn't like you think of a lot of artists and they suddenly hide out once they're famous or whatever, and he was not like that.
Oh, he was at every single event.
Yeah.
Every time I went out, I would say it. Really? It was always like huddled in the corner, or, he was very social. He liked to be at all the cool places. He liked to meet all the cool people. Whoever was doing anything, Andy was interested in. Yeah.
So through your moving to LA and whatever, you lost the negatives.
Yes. So I had put 10 away, but I have a very bad memory. And I went on to my next projects, which were the actors, and I moved to LA and living my life. And I got married at one point to a Swedish man, and I was living my life. And then I started at one point in 2011, I did some spiritual work with Darje, who was an ex-Tibetan monk. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, you know what? You have a lot more to give the world, but we're going to have to revitalize you, reawaken you. We have to wake you up. And I was like, really? Okay. But I did the work, and it really did wake me up. He released a lot of stuck energy in me. And I, at the time, was reading the Financial Times, and I saw this article that Andy had just sold, or one of Andy's self-portraits sold for $38 million. Wow. And I was like, what?
Where's my pick?
Where's all my negatives? And I was like frantic, and it took me a week of looking. I had boxes piled up high. It was like an American Express thing, looking for treasure. And luckily, I was able to find 10 of these.
So where do you think the rest of them went?
I took 36.
Yeah. So you've kept the 10 best ones, or you think?
No, I think honestly, I had given some to a photo agency and they didn't really even use them. And then I tried to contact them and they said they don't have them. So who knows? They may have been thrown out.
Right.
It was filmed. I just don't know. Right. But I did find the 10 and then I conceptualized creating the Lost Worlds.
So that's why they're called the Lost Warhols. I love that.
Yeah.
And okay, so I definitely feel like we need a part 2 of this. But what I want to sort of bring this back to, because you've done a lot of different collaborations with people throughout the years with the Lost Warhols. What have you done and what are you doing now?
Well, I've had the honor, privilege, and fun of working with a lot of LA street artists, and then I've done collaborations with artists in Portugal, in Dublin, and most recently I've collaborated with Shepard Fairey.
That's exciting.
I really have been wanting to do that for so long, and it just happened organically, and he created this beautiful, beautiful artwork. We sold out in 60 seconds, and I think it's amazing, classic.
Wow.
And I think, hopefully we can do a mural together because it's so beautiful. And it is going to be part of he's going to do some pieces for Photography Ski next year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I am now finally archiving everything, and I'm going to put everything in a shop. I'm going to have it accessible for the first time for people to be able to purchase some of these Lost Warhols. And then I'm working on several projects, but also I'm very excited. A project in Mexico City next year during the Zocalo. That should be very exciting with Mexican artists and some celebrity artists who are very talented. So I'm out here, and I also, I've got my Queen series, my Gold Queen series. I'm very much about.
You're not only just known for your Warhols, although that is what we're talking about today. You are an artist in your own right with other images. And
yes, and I've become,
honestly, like the magazine that she has around here with her work all over.
Chris Brown, collaboration with Chris Brown. So I'm here to do so many fun.
Yeah, so she's being modest, but there's a lot that she's done, and kind of like as her friend, like I didn't really even know all this, and like really admire her, and your vision and your art is just really wonderful.
Well, out of the collaboration queen, last year, 2 years ago, I really got into abstract painting, and at some point I hope to get back to that. But I also love curating, and as I said, I'm conceptual, and I'm just like to think out of the box and inspire, and I just feel like there's a lot more.
So how do you feel about this chapter being in Miami?
It's taken me a bit, but I'm starting to love Miami. I'm embracing the Latino culture. I'm listening to Bad Bunny and Maluma. And I do love the tropical weather. I love the fact that it rains a lot and it's so green. And I love being surrounded by water. And so I'm really falling in love with Miami as a place to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if everything's on your website as far as the paintings and the artwork and the information.
Yes, you can go. I'm working on the Karen Bystedt shop.com and the lostwarholshop.com. And I also have the lostwarhols.com. And then my Instagram is at Karen Bystedt.
Those will all be in the notes.
And I do follow my life. But the art will be available for the first time on my curated art, the Lost Warhols, which are very collectible, on the shop. the Karen Bystedt.
Okay. That's awesome. And I think we need to do a part 2 with all the people you photographed in LA.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do a part 2.
Yeah.
Because that's a whole other chapter of yours that is really fascinating. So yay, honey. Well, thank you. Cheers. What a great story. I love it. And stay tuned for more.
Yes, and thank you for all your wonderful support.
Always. And right back at you. Absolutely. All right. Cheers. What's really cool about what Karen is doing is she's inviting artists to collaborate with her on these Lost Warhol images. And so it's bringing in another element. I think Warhol would be really stoked about it because, like he did with Basquiat and other collaborations, she's actually carrying that forward at her most recent one with Shepard Fairey. So I hope you like this interview. I definitely think we need a part 2 because she did film a lot of the up-and-coming Hollywood stars. She did a lot of photographs. And I'm really excited to see the impact she has here in Miami coming up to Art Basel. So like and follow for more and check her out on her Instagram, and the links are below. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and follow.